Hello everyone. Tonight, we step barefoot onto warm marble into a room filled with drifting steam. The low murmur of Latin conversation and the occasional slap of wet feet against stone. No, this isn't a modern spa. It's something older, grander,
Marcus.
and
Good to see
infinitely
you.
stranger.
And you, Lucius. That
You've
was
just
quite
walked
the
into
greeting.
a Roman bathhouse of Thermae, and your senses are already overwhelmed. The air smells of smoke and skin and something herbal you can't quite name. There's the crackling of unseen fires beneath your feet, the rush
posso
of water
varos?
behind walls, and distant echoes bouncing off columns too high to count. Statues watch you from alcoves, gods with blank eyes and suspiciously polished abs. You probably won't survive this. Or at least, not without slipping sweating and being thoroughly exfoliated by a man with no eyebrows. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand just inside the main entrance of the Thermae, blinking against the haze. Light filters in through high, clear-story windows, catching on steam and sweat alike. You're not alone, far from it. Dozens of men mill around you, half-dressed or fully unclothed, each moving through the space like it's his second home. Which, in a way, it is. To your left, a man greets his friend with an enthusiastic slap on the shoulder and a yell of "Salve," the Roman version of "What's up?" while his toga slips almost completely off. No one cares. To your right, two young boys, both oil slaves, carry a large copper container between them, swaying gently as they struggle not to spill. One grumbles in Greek, the other hums tunelessly. The floor beneath your feet is not just stone, it's heated. A faint warmth seeps up through the soles of your sandals. It feels luxurious, purposeful, and also a little unnerving, because you know the fire that makes this floor warm is burning in the hands of a man you'll never see, crouched below the building in a narrow tunnel shoveling wood into the hippocaust's belly. You step further in, and the building opens up before you. It's immense. The Romans didn't believe in doing things halfway. This isn't a bathhouse, it's a monument to public hygiene and imperial power, dressed up as a wellness center. Statues line the corridors, busts of emperors, marble gods, the occasional well-muscled athlete holding a discus and looking far too pleased with himself. Mosaics ripple under your feet depicting dolphins, chariots, and once oddly, what seems to be a chicken wearing a wreath. You pass under an archway, and a servant offers you a thin towel and a glance that somehow says, "Don't take too long in the caldarium. Someone fainted in there yesterday." You don't know where to begin. Fortunately, the Roman bathhouse has a sequence part ritual, part logic. And you're now stepping into the first room in that sacred chain, the apoditerium, the changing room. But before you can even disrobe, your eyes are already drinking in every detail. Oil flasks hang from pegs. Benches run the length of the walls. A few men sit talking business in hushed tones, their tunics gathered around their waists. A pair of older gentlemen argue about the grain prices, one flailing dramatically with a sandal. Everything echoes. The acoustics of the room turn whispers into rumors. And that's part of the point. Baths weren't just for cleansing, they were for listening, for trading secrets, for watching who was talking to whom. You remove your tunic and fold it awkwardly, trying to mimic the grace of the man beside you who drapes his like a scarf on a carved lion's head. You fail, of course. A young boy rushes by with a strigil, a curved metal scraper used to clean oiled skin, and nearly knocks over a water jar. He looks terrified, probably apprenticed to someone with a temper and a taste for theatrical punishment. You step aside. A thin man with the posture of a retired centurion asks if you're here for the full cycle or just the frigidarium. You mumble something non-committal. He nods approvingly and limps away. There's a joke somewhere about cold feet, but you keep it to yourself. Historians still argue whether the typical Roman really used the baths daily, or whether that was a privilege of the urban elite. What's clear, though, is that the thermae were centers not just of health, but of life, of movement, of stories. And your story here has just begun. Your shoulders sag as you finally sit on the bench, bare skin meeting warm stone. For a moment, you close your eyes. You inhale steam and sandalwood. You forget what century you're from. And somewhere behind another door, water waits. You shift on the warm stone bench, the sound of your skin sticking just slightly as you stand. It's time to move deeper into the thermae. The changing room, apoditarium, is just the foyer of the Roman bathing experience. The real ritual begins now. You step carefully, feet bare, your folded tunic stashed in a niche, watched over by a young boy who may or may not keep an eye on it. You hope so. Theft in Roman baths was common enough that some people carved curses into the walls, actual engraved wishes for divine revenge against toga thieves. The gods apparently were always watching. You pass into a narrow corridor lit with natural light, filtering down from slit windows above. Steam begins to thicken in the air. You're headed into the tepidarium, the warm room. The moment you cross the threshold, it wraps around you like a damp blanket. The air is warmer than expected, not oppressive, not hot, just wet. A humid cradle of breath and echoes. You hear the subtle splash of water, the low hum of conversation. Everything feels slower in here, even thought. You blink, and your vision clears just enough to make out the room. Columns line the walls, painted in faded reds and ochres. Murals above show gods lounging in clouds or standing over mortals in various states of undress. The floor is tiled in small mosaic patterns, the kind that look abstract until you step back and realize you're standing on Neptune's beard. Several bathers are already here, reclining on stone benches or lying flat on terracotta slabs. One man is being gently scraped with a strigil by a slave, long rhythmic strokes, removing oil and dirt and whatever the morning clung to him. Another stretches eyes closed, humming a hymn to Bacchus under his breath. You find a bench and lower yourself slowly. The stone is warm, not hot. Pleasant but firm, like a sun-warmed rock beside a river. You exhale. Your body, so recently tense, begins to soften without your permission. A servant approaches, offering a small flask of oil. You nod, and he pours a bit into your hand. The oil is lightly scented myrrh and something sharper, maybe pine. Roman bathing was as much about smell as it was about water. Everyone oiled themselves before cleansing. It's strange at first rubbing oil into skin you want to clean, but you quickly see the logic. Dirt clings to oil. Oil clings to skin. The strigil takes both away. You begin to apply the oil slowly. Arms, chest, shoulders. You realize how sore you've been. You don't often pay attention to your shoulders, but now they're asking for a little sympathy. The oil warms under your palms. Your skin gleams slightly in the filtered light. A man beside you sneezes violently and curses Jupiter. You both chuckle. Historians still argue whether Romans had any sense of germ theory or if bathing was entirely about ritual comfort and social optics. What's certain is that they took very good care of their outer selves, and the tepidarium was the first phase of that transformation. You watch the others around you. It's a strange mixture, young men showing off biceps sculpted by sword drills. Old men with bellies like wine casks, swapping gossip slaves working efficiently with practiced grace. Rank exists, but here in the mist, it's muted. The toga is gone. Titles left at the door. Even emperors, if they came as men first. You notice a couple of older gentlemen in deep conversation. Their voices are low, but the names they drop drift across the room like incense. Seneca Gaius, the governor's nephew. It seems no space in Rome is exempt from politics, not even the dampest ones. Across from you, a young man sits nearly motionless, his back against a painted pillar. His eyes are closed, his head resting on his forearm. You wonder if he's asleep, or meditating, or simply hiding from whatever waits for him beyond these walls. A servant brushes past you with a brass scraper and a bowl of tepid water. He nods politely, then kneels beside a man who lifts one arm without speaking, already halfway into his afternoon ritual. You start to feel weightless, not from heat yet, but from slowness. The tepidarium is a space designed to make you forget clocks. No sundials in here, no schedules. Just the rhythm of dripping water and the dull scrape of metal on skin. You close your eyes for a moment. And in that moment, you're not in 2025. You're not in your body. You're floating in a time that pulses with marble and murmurs. You wonder if you'll ever be this still again. Then from somewhere to your left, a splash. Not a gentle one. A full-bodied slap of water and air. You open your eyes. Someone just came out of the caldarium. Their dripping red-faced steam rising from their shoulders like a sacrificial offering. They're laughing. You know what comes next. You rise from the bench skin, oiled and warm limbs, reluctant to leave the comfort of the tepidarium. The air shifts slightly as you move toward the next chamber. You can already feel it before you see it, the caldarium. The hot room. You pause just outside the archway. Heat rushes out like breath from an angry god. The air hits your face thick and heavy, tinged with copper, and something herbal, maybe bay leaf or crushed thyme. It curls into your nostrils and sinks into your chest. Your feet hesitate on the threshold, your body asking if this is really the best idea. You step in. It's a different world. Everything is stone and steam. You can barely see 10 paces in front of you. The fog glows in the torchlight, making every shape seem half-formed, every sound muffled like you've slipped underwater in a dream. This is not a place for small talk. This is where your skin speaks. You pass a fountain, just a trickle of hot water gurgling from the mouth of a lion's head carved into the wall. Someone's left a wooden bucket beneath it, half full. The stone around it is stained rust red, kissed by minerals and time. The temperature is startling. Your body resists. Your breath shortens. Your pores revolt. But then you surrender. You let the heat claim you. There's a large circular basin in the center of the room, a pool of steaming water glowing like molten amber. A man climbs out of it, slick with sweat, his chest heaving. His legs look like they've forgotten how to walk. He staggers to a bench and collapses with a satisfied groan. You envy him. You edge closer to the water, careful. Everything is slippery here. The tiles beneath your feet are slick with oil moisture and the memory of 1,000 bare souls. You lower yourself slowly. The heat grabs you, not violently, but insistently. Your skin prickles. Your chest flutters. Your knees complain. And then calm. You sit shoulder-submerged, hair damp within seconds. The water clings to you like a second skin. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. It fogs the air in front of you, mingling with everyone else's. This is where the Romans came to melt. Not just physically, mentally. Emotionally, you let yourself go. You let the water erase whatever came before battle business betrayal. A man near you mutters something in Latin and wipes his brow with the back of his hand. You can't make out the words, but the tone is universal good grief. This is hot. Another man chuckles. This is nothing, he says. Try the baths at Baiai. They cook your bones there. A third man, eyes closed, mumbles, at Baiai the gods boil their sins away. Baiai, the infamous resort town of emperors and excess, of wine scandal and sulfuric springs. You make a mental note to not visit. Someone passes behind you carrying a small brass brazier filled with glowing coals. Why is there more fire in here? It seems impossible, unnecessary, and very Roman. You begin to sweat in earnest. It runs down your neck, your spine, your chest. You imagine it taking everything toxic with it: fear, worry, politics, questionable decisions. Historians still argue whether the caldarium was modeled after Etruscan sweat rituals or imported from Greek influences. What they agree on is this: the Romans turned it into an art form. You watch as a man has hot water ladled over his shoulders by a slave, wearing only a cloth around his waist. The steam that rises makes the air shimmer. You feel like you're inside a living fresco. The walls are painted, though much of the color is hidden now by moisture. You catch glimpses of scenes: Venus rising from the sea, Apollo driving his chariot, Mars flexing dramatically beside an amphora. Classic Roman decor, equal parts myth and muscles. You start to lose track of time. That's by design. The caldarium wasn't meant for clocks. It was meant to undo you. Your joints begin to soften. Your thoughts go quiet. And your skin, flushed and gleaming, begins to forget what it was ever protecting you from. You close your eyes. You are stone. You are heat. You are Roman. Until a clang, not loud but sharp. The door at the far end opens. A blast of cooler air rushes in like a slap to the lungs. Someone new enters, red-faced, half-oiled, grinning like a fool. He says, "You ready for the real test?" You know what he means. The plunge pool. The frigidarium waits. You hesitate at the doorway. There's a chill seeping through the arch that leads to the frigidarium, the cold room. It slips past your shoulders, curls around your spine, and whispers, "Are you absolutely sure about this?" You're not. But you go anyway. The transition from the heat of the caldarium is immediate and rude. The sweat cooling on your skin turns against you, clinging like regret. Goosebumps rise instantly. You hug your arms across your chest, wondering why the Romans did this to themselves on purpose. Then you see it. The plunge pool. A shallow basin of shimmering icy water glowing pale blue beneath a high ceiling. A few bathers are already inside, submerged to their necks, their faces fixed in expressions of either ecstasy or trauma. Maybe both. One young man climbs out, gasping dramatically, and wraps himself in a woolen cloak like he's just survived a naval disaster. This is the reset. You walk forward slowly. The floor tiles here are cool beneath your feet, slick but safe. Roman engineers knew what they were doing. The room smells different too. Fresher, less scented oil, more stone and air. Almost like you've stepped outside, even though you're still wrapped in marble. You lower yourself onto the steps leading into the water. Your toes touch first, then your ankles. Then a mistake. You stop halfway, in instinct screaming retreat. But there's no dignity in turning back now. A middle-aged man watching you from the far side smirks. First time he says, teeth chattering slightly. You nod. He laughs, but kindly. Don't think, just do. So you do. You slide in. The cold slams into you like a charging boar. You gasp. Your lungs rebel. Your arms flail momentarily before you grip the edge of the basin. You're no longer thinking of Roman history. You're thinking about survival. Then, slowly, something strange happens. Your body adjusts. Not fully, not happily, but enough. You begin to breathe again. The shock fades into clarity. Every nerve is awake. Your muscles tighten in defense, but your mind sharpens. You feel cleansed not in some spiritual way, but in a deeply primal one. This was the point. The frigidarium wasn't about pleasure. It was the Roman exclamation mark at the end of the bathing sentence. Heat opened your pores. Cold slammed them shut. Emotionally and physically, it reset you. You float for a moment, arms out, feet barely touching the floor. Above you, the ceiling is painted with a fresco Neptune, again surrounded by dolphins. One of the dolphins looks more like a horse, but you're too cold to care. The cold gives your thoughts edges. You remember a story you once read about Emperor Augustus, who refused to enter the frigidarium unless the water was freshly drawn from mountain springs. He called lukewarm water the coward's comfort. Probably said it in a toga made of silk. Historians still argue whether cold plunges were a daily necessity or a badge of honor among Romans. Some evidence suggests the bravest citizens made a habit of skipping the caldarium altogether, diving straight into ice like gladiators in self-imposed combat. You're not one of them. But for now you stay. Another bather slides in beside you and nods. He doesn't speak. There's an understanding here. In the cold, the chatter stops. It's too hard to talk and shiver with dignity at the same time. You look around. There's an alcove near the edge with small stone basins filled with even colder water brachia, meant for splashing over the face or neck if full immersion was too much. A man in the corner dips a cloth into one and wipes his forehead like he's prepping for a duel. The boy from earlier, one of the oil slaves, enters quietly barefoot, carrying a tray with cups. You're surprised to see it. Cold wine, perhaps? No, it's pasca, the sour mix of vinegar and water that Roman soldiers favored. Not luxurious, but it does wake the senses. You take a cup sip. It stings your throat and makes your nose twitch. You kind of like it. You settle back into the water. The frigidarium no longer feels like punishment. It feels like rebirth. You understand now why some Roman poets wrote odes to this very room. Not the grand baths or the steam or the oil, but the cold clarity of this space. The place where the world became quiet, sharp and real again. You close your eyes. You no longer miss the heat. You miss nothing. Because in this cold, you feel entirely alive. You rise from the frigidarium like a statue reanimating. Your skin tingles not from heat or cold now, but from awakening. Every pore has done its job, every nerve is alert, and your limbs feel lighter as if the water wrung some secret weight out of them. You step onto the stone ledge, careful not to slip, and a servant is already waiting, towel in hand, eyes politely lowered. You nod your thanks. The towel is rough but dry, and Roman linen has a scratchy dignity to it. You press it against your arms, your chest, your face. You're still damp but no longer dripping. This isn't the end of the bathhouse experience. Not even close. You're about to meet someone crucial, someone who makes the whole system work. The man behind the steam. You follow a corridor branching off the frigidarium, guided by warm flickers of torchlight and the faint clang of iron tools. The air changes again, warmer now, drier, laced with smoke. You're near the prefernium, the furnace room. You're not supposed to be here. This space isn't for citizens or senators. It's for workers, slaves, men with soot-caked faces and backs bent by firewood. But your curiosity walks you in anyway. The room is dim and low-ceilinged, lined with massive brick furnaces. They glow a deep, angry orange, their mouths open like dragons waiting for more fuel. One man crouches near a hippocaust, opening, jamming in another bundle of timber. Sweat pours down his temples despite the chill outside. He doesn't look at you. Not out of fear, out of rhythm. He's focused. He's part of the fire now. You notice his tools, long-handled pokers, metal scrapers, heavy gloves made from stitched hide. A bucket of water sits nearby just in case. A ladder leads up toward an access grate that opens beneath the caldarium floor. This is how the heat rises. The hippocaust. An engineering marvel hidden beneath sandals and mosaics. The Romans raised the floors on stacks of brick pillars, creating a crawl space. Through that gap, hot air from these furnaces is channeled, heating the stone slabs above. Chimneys in the walls help pull the hot air upward, cycling the warmth from floor to ceiling. You crouch slightly and peer into the hippocaust gap. It's not spacious. A person could crawl in there, but not comfortably. It's narrow, low, and dangerous. And yet, someone does. Because someone has to maintain the flow. Historians still argue whether furnace slaves rotated frequently or stayed assigned to single baths. What they do agree on is that this job was brutal. Endless heat, constant soot, the risk of burns, and the invisibility of labor. No one praises the man who keeps your floor warm. But without him, every noble bather in Rome would be shivering in their sandals. You step back from the furnace mouth, the heat lingering on your face. It follows you, even as you walk away, retracing your steps toward the public rooms. You feel different. Not just physically, but in awareness. Comfort has a cost. You pass the tepidarium again and spot a familiar face, one of the oil slaves from earlier, now napping in the corner, with a copper jug still clutched to his chest. He must have earned it. You're not sure what time it is anymore. But your body knows you've passed through fire and ice. You've stood in marble rooms with statues and strangers. And now, it might be time for massage. You follow the scent of myrrh and something sweet cinnamon into a side chamber. It's smaller, quieter. A few reclining benches each, with a low marble table beside it, stocked with flasks and towels. A tall man greets you with a simple nod and gestures toward an empty slab. You lie down. The stone is cold at first. Then your body warms it. Then you forget what temperature even is. The masseur begins with oil. Something thick and fragrant poured into his palm with a practiced motion. Then hands. Firm, practiced. He starts at your shoulders and works downward, pressing, pulling, kneading. Not gently, but not cruelly either. You breathe out in stages. Words disappear. Your thoughts blur. He pauses to scrape gently with a flat bronze tool, another strigil, but this one polished smooth with age and use. You feel the oil lift the grime of the day. Vanish the outer, you surrender to something ancient and intentional. You are not being pampered. You are being recalibrated. Romans didn't do massage for pleasure. They did it for balance. To prepare the body for the city, for the field, for politics, for war. You remember a bit of trivia. Emperor Nero traveled with 3 personal masseurs. One for shoulders, one for legs, and one just to oil his scalp. Decadent, sure. But maybe he knew something. You feel your eyes grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from clarity. When the masseur finishes, he presses a warm cloth to your forehead and leaves without a word. You lie there a moment longer, blinking at the carved ceiling above. Somewhere behind the walls, the furnaces still roar. And beneath it all, beneath marble and mosaic, steam and sweat, there's a quiet network of people, heat and motion, that keeps every moment working. You rise, and your body rises with you. You're clean now, oiled, scraped, steamed, and plunged. But strangely, the bathhouse isn't finished with you yet. As you rejoin the flow of the therme, something subtle shifts. The air is heavier with conversation. The rooms are more crowded now. And you start to notice that bathing, at least for the Romans, is not just about water. It's about status. You step into the palestra, the open-air courtyard attached to many bath complexes. It's a rectangular space, flanked by colonnades, where men wrestle throwballs or engage in philosophical debates in between sets of squats with stone weights. It's hot, dusty, loud, and fascinating. On your left, two young men in indigo loincloths spar half-heartedly, while a small audience of older men critique their form. One nods solemnly. Another adjusts his signet ring and says, "Too much shoulder, not enough hip." You can't tell if he's offering martial advice or judging a statue. On your right, a merchant with a belly like a wine jug lectures a small group of listeners. He's talking grain prices or perhaps naval strategy, but he does it shirtless mid-massage with a towel draped over one eye. Somehow, no one seems to mind. You realize quickly, this place is a theater. Not for drama, but for display. Every flexed bicep, every debated policy, every shared proverb is a performance. This is where senators get noticed, where clients curry favor, and where young upstarts hope someone important overhears them being clever. And your audience participant and scene decoration all at once. You walk slowly through the crowd, still half damp, and try to blend in. Someone bumps your shoulder, you turn. It's a man in a saffron-dyed tunic, well cut too clean for manual labor. He raises his eyebrows. "You're new." You nod. He grins. "Careful. The frigidarium will toughen your body, but the palestra will eat your ego." Then he walks off. You're not sure if he was flirting or threatening. Maybe both. Historians still argue whether Roman baths truly leveled the classes. There are records of senators and freedmen bathing side by side, even emperors showing up in disguise for a soak among the commoners. But there's always a catch: how you moved, who you greeted, and when you arrived said as much about your standing as the size of your estate. And nowhere is that more apparent than here. Two men argue nearby, not with fists, but with quotes. One invokes Cicero, the other quotes Virgil with a smirk. A third man, reclining against a column, interjects with, "Actually, Livy phrased it better." And just like that, it's a full-blown citation battle. It's exhausting. You find a bench in the shade and sit for a moment. Someone brings a tray of drinks Molson, perhaps that sweet blend of wine and honey. You accept a cup. It's lukewarm but soothing, sticky but pleasant. The cup is clay, stamped with the initials of the bath's patron. This place was free to enter, at least for citizens, but that didn't mean it was cheap to build. These public baths were often funded by wealthy benefactors, men seeking legacy, loyalty, or perhaps just admiration in stone. Their names are carved over archways painted in frescoes and pressed into the very cups you drink from. Nothing is free, not even public bathing. A group of young men begin tossing a leather ball in a circle. They're shirtless, glistening in the sun, all muscle and laughter. You overhear one mutter, "Don't throw like a Thracian," and another responds with a mock gasp. You suspect it's an insult. You notice something else now: who gets oiled and by whom. Older men with well-trained slaves receive meticulous attention: shoulders, rubbed calves, kneaded backs, polished with cloths, perfumed by myrtle or lavender. Younger, poorer bathers do it themselves or help one another, trading labor like coins. You lie back and close your eyes. There's sun on your face, heat from the courtyard stones at your back, the echo of sandals' laughter, the occasional barked instruction. You feel for a fleeting moment that you could stay here forever. The idea is seductive, not just the warmth, the belonging. This bath isn't just a building, it's a miniature empire. One where the rules are visible if not always fair, and the rituals are soothing if not always kind. You understand now why Rome poured so much wealth into these places. It wasn't just to clean bodies. It was to display them, to measure them, to sort them. And yet somehow, to equalize them too, if only for a few hours. A bell chimes somewhere inside. Someone nearby mutters, "The second hour." Afternoon. You should keep moving. You haven't even seen the massage courtyard or the bathhouse snack stalls. And you haven't yet dared peek into the library wing because, yes, some bath complexes had those too. But for now, you sit and you exist. A stranger in the center of Rome, oiled and bare, and watching senators gossip with slaves under the same painted sky. You finally rise from the bench in the palestra, knees creaking a little, as if in protest. Whether it's from the cold plunge, the hot soak, or simply the overwhelming swirl of social choreography, you're not sure. But the bathhouse waits, and you haven't seen all its corners yet. You follow the flow of traffic, if such a word applies to bare-chested men in sandals, moving with the lazy confidence of cats in sunbeams toward a shaded corridor. Here the air shifts again. Gone are the smells of oil and sweat and cinnamon wine. Now it's something subtler. Charcoal, papyrus, waxed wood. You've wandered into the library wing. Yes, a library. Inside the bathhouse. Because for the Romans, the mind needed cleansing just as much as the body. You blink at the sudden dimness. The ceilings are lower here, the sound muffled. Shelves line the walls filled with scrolls, some rolled tight in their casings, others partially unfurled on angled desks. Scribes sit with styluses, copying text or pretending to. A young boy dusts a marble bust of Minerva with a feather brush, looking extremely bored. You walk softly as if stepping into a temple. The room smells of age, not decay use. Leather bindings, ink, melted wax from the oil lamps. And there's something else here too. Silence rare in a place filled with so much human heat and chatter. A few bathers recline on low couches, scrolls unspooled across their laps. One reads aloud softly to a friend, probably reciting a bit of Horace or Catullus, with a smirk that implies it's more risque than reverent. Another gestures with a stylus while explaining something, maybe military tactics or the finer points of stoic thought. Hard to say. You're not expected to be here, at least not for long. The library is less crowded, more curated, reserved unofficially for the kind of men who know when to quote Plato and when to pretend they didn't just pass gas in the tepidarium. Still, no one stops you. You wander between columns, brushing your fingertips across the smooth scroll cubbies. Some are labeled. Others seem organized by mystery. You pulse one de architectura and recognize the name Vitruvius, the architect. The one who wrote about the Hippocaust system you now owe your warm feet to. You sit on a bench. The scroll is thicker than you thought. Illustrated. Diagrams in red ink showing cross-sections of bathhouses and aqueducts. You read slowly the Latin formal and tight like a pressed tunic. And there one line leaps out at you. Balnea sunt remedium corporis et animi. Baths are a remedy for the body and the soul. You smile. You've lived that truth today. Outside the door, you hear the soft rise of voices again. Someone laughing, someone hurrying past, someone demanding more oil in a tone that suggests a noble temper in need of food. You roll the scroll carefully, place it back and stand. You take one last look around. This room, the library, is the heartbeat of something deeper in the Roman psyche. A bathhouse is not just a machine for cleanliness. It's a system for identity. You come here to be seen, yes, but also to remember yourself, to be quiet, to think, to borrow the dignity of marble columns and carved gods and pages that whisper instead of shout. Historians still argue whether these libraries were used seriously or simply existed for show. Some say the scrolls were rarely touched. The scribes paid more for posture than productivity. Others insist that these corners were hubs of real learning, where doctors read Galen and generals skimmed Caesar's memoirs between dips. You believe both, because Rome did both: display and substance, theater and meaning. One layered over the other until even the simplest room carried 24 interpretations. You step back into the corridor. The warmth rushes to greet you again. Somewhere down the hall, someone's calling for fresh towels. You walk past the laconicum, the dry sauna, where men sweat in near silence on low benches, their faces slack and blissful. You peek into a room where a group sits cross-legged around a storyteller listening to a tale about Odysseus and a very angry goat. It makes no sense, but no one seems to mind. You're hungry now, and the baths are prepared for that too. You follow the smell, not strong, but specific. Toasted bread, honey, roasted pine nuts. Because yes, Roman baths came with snacks. You step into a small annex near the main exit, a stall really, but a permanent one. A vendor stands behind a marble counter, slicing small loaves of dark wheat bread and handing out earthen cups filled with warm, spiced wine. He nods as you approach. "No charge today," he says, offered by the patron. You accept the cup and raise it. The wine is laced with cinnamon, maybe bay leaf. It's not strong, but it's enough. You drink slowly. You chew carefully. And for the first time since entering, you feel full. Not of food, but of experience. This bathhouse isn't just a structure. It's a culture. And somehow you now carry part of it with you. You finish the last sip of wine, the warmth settling into your chest like a friend dropping by, uninvited but welcome. The pine nuts are gone. The honey still lingers on your tongue. Your stomach, now content, gives a soft sigh of approval. But even with the scent of roasted flour fading behind you, the bathhouse isn't done revealing itself. Because now, with your body soft and skin glowing, you start to listen. Not to the walls, not to the statues, to the people. Everywhere Romans are talking. And not just about weather or wine. You catch snippets of politics, business strategy, and scandal. Conversations thick with implication and subtle eye contact. Here in the baths, then everyone is half naked. But the real exposure is what they're saying. You drift toward a cluster of men reclining on benches, their conversation low but intense. One gestures with a fig in hand. Another slices cheese without ever breaking eye contact with his opponent. Gaius's grain ships were delayed again. No coincidence. And the governor's wife, also no coincidence. You try not to look like you're listening. But everyone listens in the baths. That's the point. This is where alliances form, where favors are traded, where enemies are spotted and occasionally befriended. Two men to your right are arguing not loudly, but fiercely. Their words coil and strike like snakes in conversation. Something about a land dispute. Something about water rights. You imagine they will both walk away later smiling through their teeth, then dispatch letters to their respective lawyers or assassins. Historians still argue whether the baths were truly a political engine or simply an extension of elite leisure. Some call it Rome's original social media feed, scroll-free but no less intrusive. You believe it, because here words carry heat, and everything in the Thermae is designed to make you talk more and think less, which paradoxically makes what you say matter more. You pass a man dictating to his libertus, a former slave now turned assistant, who scribbles notes on wax tablets with furious precision. You catch a few phrases: proposal to the tribune, tax relief for imports. He pauses mid-thought to sip Posca, then continues without missing a beat. Across the way, another man reclines on a stone slab as two others sit beside him. He's the one speaking. The other two nod occasionally, their eyes sharp. You catch a name, Tiberius, then not after what happened in Hispania. It seems someone's political career may be cooling off. You walk on. At the edge of the room, you pass a familiar face, one of the masseurs from earlier. He's off duty now, sitting cross-legged, dicing figs with a knife so small it seems ceremonial. He glances up, gives you the nod of shared understanding you've seen behind the curtain now. The bathhouse is no longer just a building to you. It's a machine, a carefully constructed engine of empire. The water, the heat, the massage, the library, they're all components. But the core of the system, conversation. You remember hearing once that Augustus would sometimes summon senators to the baths, not for official meetings, but for casual discussion. Because people say things in towels they'd never say in togas. You can feel it happening around you. One man laughing too loudly, another pausing before choosing a word as if consulting a ghost. One bath-goer passes a folded note to another wrapped in a cloth meant to look like laundry. Deals are made in steam. You find a quiet bench and sit watching. A boy runs past, chasing a small dog through a puddle with more splashing than grace. Two older men sit beside a brazier, warming their feet and discussing poetry. One recites a line about Achilles, with theatrical flair, waving his wine cup dangerously close to his friend's head. Elsewhere, a group of younger bathers gather in a semicircle, listening to a speaker, a wiry man, with sharp eyes and the cadence of someone used to commanding attention. Rome isn't marble, he says, it's momentum. Stop and it collapses. They nod, or pretend to. You lean back. Let the sound of ambition wash over you. Let the voices sharp, soft, cynical mingle with the trickle of water and the low hiss of fire in distant chambers. This isn't just socializing. This is maintenance. Rome is too big to be managed in palaces alone. It needs spaces like this where men trade sweat for power oil for opportunity. You wonder who's listening to you right now? Probably no one. Or maybe someone tucked into a nearby shadow taking note of how long you lingered in the frigidarium, how easily you blend with senators and slaves alike. The bathhouse sees everything. You sip again from your cup refilled by a passing servant without your asking, and marvel that this city, with all its contradictions, runs so smoothly from within a room where everyone is half naked and glowing. You rise again, still not dry, still not done. You leave the whispering corridors of political intrigue and head toward another room, guided now by scent more than sound. Something sharp, earthy, almost muddy clings to the air. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. You round a mosaic-lined corner and find it. The mud and massage chamber. Or if you'd rather be technical, the part of the baths where Romans take their wellness a step beyond clean and into curiously slimy. You're greeted not by a servant, but by a small wooden table covered in bowls, each one filled with different mixtures: green clay, crushed herbs, charcoal paste, some concoction that looks suspiciously like it used to be a mushroom. The attendant smiles. Today we have a Gaulish blend, good for inflammation and scandal. You raise an eyebrow. He doesn't explain. You sit on the stone bench, and within seconds, he's brushing a thick, grainy substance across your shoulders and down your arms. It's warm, wet, smells faintly of moss and smoked thyme. You half expect a squirrel to appear. The texture is soothing at first, but soon as he works it into your skin with methodical pressure, you realize something vital. It itches. Just slightly. Just enough to drive your attention away from politics, away from the crowd, and deep into the realm of pure bodily sensation. This is how the Romans did wellness: one eye on pleasure, one foot in discomfort. A man to your left is coated in a darker clay, black as soot, leaning back, with his eyes closed, face set, in an expression of pure ecstasy or existential dread. His hands twitch as the attendant scrapes a strigil slowly across his chest. Another man mutters something about opening the pores to release bad humors, and someone else answers, "Bad humor is what killed my last marriage." They both laugh. You almost do too. Historians still debate whether mud treatments were based on real medical theory or just another excuse for Romans to experiment with texture. Some ancient physicians like Galen swore by mineral-rich clays and herbal blends. Others scoffed, suggesting it was just expensive dirt with good marketing. The attendant returns with a bundle of warm towels. He gestures for you to lie back. You comply, though the bench is harder than expected and just slightly too short for comfort. A second servant joins him now. Together, they begin the real massage. It's intense. Roman massages are not gentle affairs. These aren't polite spa strokes. These are the hands of men trained to knead war veterans back into shape. They grip your shoulders like dough. They fold your calves like scrolls. One presses a thumb into your back so hard you nearly yelp, but instead, a groan escapes equal parts agony and revelation. You didn't know you'd been clenched for years. Now you do. As they work, the attendants talk quietly, not to you, but over you. One says, "Did you hear about the girl who slipped in the frigidarium?" The other third this week. Then silence. Then it's always the perfumed ones. Too much oil. You try not to take offense. You did, after all, oil yourself quite liberally. The massage slows. They press warm towels against your legs, then wrap them briefly. The contrast of cool air and heated cloth sends a wave of dizziness through your chest. You blink slowly. You're not entirely sure where you are. And that's the point. This part of the bathhouse is about dissolution. You aren't a senator or a baker or a soldier here. You're just sensation. And clay. So much clay. After some indeterminate period, the attendants help you rise and guide you to a small basin at the edge of the room. Warm water waits. You're handed a copper pitcher and begin rinsing yourself, watching the mud swirl away like old ink in a forgotten gutter. You scrub your face, your arms, your chest, and suddenly under the layers you see yourself again. Smoother, pinker, slightly stunned. Someone hands you a cloth and says, "You look 10 years younger." 2, if you're honest about your age. You smile, not because it's true, but because it feels true. You step back into the corridor, clean again this time, down to the sole. The noise returns gently like a tide, rolling over your eardrums. Distant laughter, the clang of ladles, the squeak of wet feet on tile. You exhale, and with that you realize something strange. You could leave now. You've done everything expected of you. Tepidarium, caldarium, frigidarium, massage, oil, politics, clay. You've fulfilled the ritual. But something keeps you here. A pull. A sense that the bathhouse, this marble labyrinth of heat, water, and whisper, isn't finished with you yet. You move slowly now, not from fatigue, but from a kind of surrender. The bathhouse has its own gravity, and you've passed the point where time matters. Hours melt like wax here. You've begun to belong to the rhythm. So naturally, it's time for the most unnatural thing of all. The cold plunge. Again. Yes, again. Because no matter how many rooms you pass through, how much oil has been applied, how much clay has been scraped from your chest, your final renewal only arrives through that one cruel crystalline basin. You retrace your steps past the tepidarium, now noisier than before. Men have returned from their circuits, chatting freely, their voices buoyed by clean skin and soft limbs. One sings an off-key drinking song. Another asks loudly where the missing dice board went. You suspect it was never lost, just claimed. Then the doorway. The frigidarium. You stand in it again, steamy warmth behind you, glacial breath before you. It's even colder now. Or maybe your awareness is sharper. This time there's no hesitation. You step in. The water wraps around you like a glove lined with knives. You gasp, but you do not stop. You plunge under fully the way a Roman might face fate all at once, eyes open, mouth shut. The cold becomes truth. You rise again, shivering slightly, heart racing like a wild horse. But it's not panic. It's aliveness. Your body is no longer yours. It's new, clean, raw in the best way, like a blank scroll waiting to be written on. You sit on the edge for a moment, catching your breath, arms folded over your knees. The air kisses your wet skin and evaporates in real time. There's something satisfying about this simplicity. No oil, no incense, just water and air and you. Nearby, a pair of men laugh about something that happened in the caldarium. Something to do with a senator, a spilled jug of olive oil, and an unfortunate slip. They reenact the moment with dramatic flair and very questionable footwork. One of them notices you. You look like a man who just remembered he has a body. You smile. I forgot for a while. Good, he says. That's the goal. And he's right. The Roman bath wasn't designed just to clean or socialize. It was built to transform, to peel back the layers of armor, both literal and emotional, that life demands and leave you with something quieter, more human. You exit the plunge and towel off with a fresh cloth provided by a passing servant who somehow appears just as you need him. Romans weren't known for magic, but moments like these suggest otherwise. You follow a different corridor now, a quieter one. There's a room you haven't noticed before. Its entrance is framed by carved laurel leaves, and inside, dim, cool, and silent, you find something unexpected: stillness. No talking, no scraping, no pouring or splashing or laughing. Just a long bench, a few reclining couches, and a low fountain gently trickling in the center. It's the silent rest chamber laconicum, or sudatorium, depending on who's translating. And it's not heated, not scented, not dramatic. It just is. You sit. For the first time since arriving, no one looks at you. No one nods. No one offers you a towel or a drink or a quote from Cicero. You're invisible. And in that invisibility, you find peace. A breeze drifts in through a slit in the upper wall. It carries with it the scent of fig trees. Somewhere outside, birds chirp. But here inside, the only sound is the steady gurgle of the fountain. You listen to your breath. It's slow, deep, even. You stretch your feet out on the tile. It's cool, solid, familiar now. The clay, the heat, the oils, they're gone. But what's left remains. You're not the same person who stepped into this place. You are lighter, not just cleaner, but quieter. Your limbs hum with blood, your skin glows like polished marble, and your thoughts drift not with urgency, but with intention. You have reached what the Romans might have called letitia corporalis, the joy of the body. And maybe, just maybe, tranquillitas animae, the calm of the soul. No declarations, no conclusions, just this stillness. And in it, a whisper of something you've earned enough. You rise from the quiet room slowly like mist, lifting from the surface of a still pool. The silence clings to you even as you step back into the more active corridors of the bathhouse. You're not ready for noise again. But the bathhouse is alive, and it doesn't wait for your mood. You return to the main walkway that splits the complex like a Roman road, with doors and arches branching off like little tributaries of sound, heat, and social orbit. You're not the only one who's reached this part of the rhythm. Others are emerging too fresh from the frigidarium, or finished with massage, or simply drying off and lingering with no clear plan. Men with towels over their shoulders chatting idly about things that now seem far away. Ships arriving at Ostia, a cousin's fourth wedding, a joke about goat theft that's clearly been told too many times. And then you notice something that changes the tempo of the room, women. Not in person, not right now, but in topic, in rule, in ghost. You overhear a servant speaking to another in the corner. They've shifted the women's hours again, he says, drying a jar with his sleeve. The matrons are furious. Better furious than mixing the other mutters. You remember now, Roman baths weren't always co-ed. In fact, they usually weren't. Women bathed in the morning or early afternoon. Men took the later hours. The shift wasn't just social, it was structural. Different times, different staff, different rhythms entirely. And yet, even with all the separation, the line blurred. There are plenty of stories of overlap, of mingling, of certain emperors ignoring the rules entirely. Elagabalus, for instance, is said to have invited both sexes to bathe together, regularly turning public hygiene into something closer to scandalous theater. Historians still argue whether the gender divide in the baths was strictly enforced or regularly winked at. Some inscriptions mention separate entrances. Others suggest that money or status allowed anyone to bend time and space, especially if you knew the right guard or carried the right name. You can almost picture it now, the same rooms you've moved through steam, swirling around pillars, sandals squeaking against wet tile, but filled instead with women in rich stola, their hair braided in loops and coils, gossiping over olive oil and debating the merits of imported perfumes. You wonder if they argued the same way the men do. Probably. Rome was nothing if not democratic in its drama. One story drifts into your mind, something you read once a senator's wife who stormed out of the caldarium when she saw her husband's mistress receiving a better massage. She allegedly tossed her strigil into a marble basin and swore never to return. She returned the next day, of course. Day of you chuckle under your breath. Even gods get jealous in Rome. As you walk, you pass a secondary apoditerium, a changing room still occupied by a few lingering bathers, adjusting their garments, drying their hair with short cloths. One man wears only his sandals, and a ring pacing nervously, as if he's lost something. You catch part of his muttering third locker on the left. Or was it fourth? He sighs, then adds, I know the slave took it. You don't ask what it is. In the far corner of the room, there's a set of stone benches carved with initials names left behind, carved years ago, maybe decades. Some are decorative, others are crude. One simply reads, Livia was here. You sit beside it, and for a moment try to imagine her. A Roman woman, maybe rich, maybe not. Maybe a wife, or a merchant, or a gladiator's daughter. Sitting here, waiting for her friend, rolling her eyes at the slave who spilled her oil. She probably didn't expect anyone to notice her name, but you did. And that's the beauty of this place, the echo of presence. Whether you're a senator or a strigil boy, a mother or a mischief maker, you leave something behind. Sometimes it's a scent. Sometimes it's a stain on the tile. Sometimes it's just a carved name on a changing room bench. You run your fingers over the stone, cool and smooth despite its years. The bathhouse doesn't hold on to heat forever, but it remembers. It always remembers. You stand again ready to return to the main chambers. But part of you stays seated beside Livia, beside the ghosts, beside the spaces carved for lives that never made it into the scrolls or statues. They were here too, not written in history books, but steamed into the walls. You find yourself drawn once again toward the tepidarium, not for the warmth this time, but for the people. The crowd has changed. Some of the earlier faces are gone, replaced by new ones just beginning their bathing cycle. The room is thicker with talk now. Not loud, not unruly, just full. As if every conversation has wrapped around another until the air itself hums with memory. You recline on a low bench. The stone is still warm. A servant brings a new flask of oil and sets it beside you without a word. You nod your thanks. He's too young to have worked long, but he moves with the caution of someone who's seen accidents. Maybe too many. To your left, a poet reads aloud to two listeners who half pay attention. You catch a line. Even marble melts in the fire of love. The line is good, but you suspect it's not his. To your right, a pair of men play a game with knuckle bones, slapping them onto a cloth stretched over a wooden board. They argue over the rules, then switch to arguing about something else entirely, inheritance maybe, or whose cousin owes whom a goat. Every bathhouse is a library of unwritten stories. And in this moment, you're content to listen. Then someone enters the room and the atmosphere shifts. He's older, bald-robed with a body not built for combat, but for confidence. He walks slowly, not from weakness, from control. A senator, maybe, or a former one. People look up when he passes. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. His presence is weighted like a statue that can walk. He takes a seat at the far end, not facing anyone directly. And soon, one by one, people drift near him. Not all at once, casually. With a subtle choreography of ambition, you recognize it. This is the real game. The bathhouse isn't just about who speaks. It's about who people speak near. Proximity is power. You remain where you are watching. The man receives a massage, then has warm oil poured into his palm by a nervous attendant. He inspects it before rubbing it into his forearms, as if weighing its purity. Then a whisper. The man beside him leans in. You can't hear the words, but the nod is unmistakable. A deal has been made, or a warning, or a promise. Something invisible, but now real. Historians still argue whether Roman politics were more dangerous in the Senate or the Thermae. There are cases where alliances formed here tipped elections, or where rivals found mutual ground beside a heated bench, naked and unarmed. Vulnerable in body, guarded in thought. And sometimes betrayal began right here with a soft word and a friendly scrub. You lean your head back, letting the stone press into your skull. You remember something someone once said, in Rome the bath sees everything and speaks only in steam. It's true. You sit in that steam now, letting it wrap around your thoughts like gauze. Someone near you stands, stretches, and shakes out his arms. The motion releases a cloud of sandalwood into the air. Another man sneezes. Someone laughs. The tension breaks just slightly. You rise again, moving toward the next room without thinking. Your body leads now, not your mind. You pass a niche where a statue of Hercules watches over a shelf of oil flasks. Someone has draped a towel across his shoulders. You smile, It's a joke, but also not. Even gods bathe. You take one last look at the tepidarium. It's dimmer now. The torches have burned lower. The shadows on the painted ceiling flicker like memory. You feel something tug at your thoughts. Not a voice, not a person, a knowing that this place, for all its marble and heat and laughter, is not just a spa. It is Rome in miniature. All its elegance, all its cruelty, all its layered choreography of ambition and accident. You don't want to leave, but you know the end of the cycle is near. There's one more chamber to visit, a final transition, a moment of stillness before the world returns. You head for the cooling room, the last door before the exit. The door to the cooling room swings open with a soft scrape of stone on stone. You step through and the change is immediate. No steam, no echoes, no scent of oil or wine. Just cool air and the whisper of quiet sandals across dry tile. The cooling room, or frigidus conclave to some, isn't flashy. It doesn't need to be. It's the hush after the aria, the silence at the end of a poem. Here the air is dry, the marble clean, the light natural falling in from high slit windows, like tired sunlight at the end of a long day. You take a seat on a simple bench. There's no music, no chatter, no performance. And that's the point. You listen to the sound of your own breath. It's steady now, deeper than before. Your heartbeat has settled from its cold plunge drum beat into something more like a whispering rhythm, a soft reminder that, yes, you're alive, clean, restored. Another man enters and nods to you. You nod back. That's it. That's the whole exchange. Words would feel excessive here. He sits a few paces down. His skin is ruddy from heat and still glistening faintly with oil. He pulls a towel over his shoulders, leans forward with a sigh, so profound it seems to come from before he entered the bathhouse. You know the feeling. A servant approaches barefoot and quiet, carrying a tray with 2 small cups, aqua mulsa perhaps, or barley water. You take one, nod your thanks. It's cool, just slightly sweet. It coats your throat like a last kind word. You sip slowly. The minutes stretch. The silence, once strange, becomes a comfort. You're no longer waiting for the next sensation. There is no next. You've crossed the threshold from ritual to reflection. And you start to realize something. The bath wasn't just a sequence. It was a story. Tepidarium curiosity, caldarium confrontation, frigidarium shock, massage release, politics complication, silence clarity. And now you're in the epilogue. You glance at the walls. There's no mosaic here, no statues, just polished plaster worn smooth by time and moisture. The only decoration is a carved quote above the doorway, mens sana in corpore sano. A sound mind in a sound body. You've heard it before. Today it finally feels earned. Historians still debate whether Romans felt the same depth in these rituals, or if that's modern sentiment projecting backward. Some argue the baths were pragmatic, daily grooming, convenient social space. Others believe the experience was intentionally spiritual, even transcendent. You're not sure either side is wrong. You look down at your hands. Clean, steady. Your skin glows faintly from oils and scrubbing, but something deeper has shifted. You feel different, lighter. Not because the dirt is gone, but because for a time you weren't expected to carry anything. In the bath, you weren't a citizen or a foreigner, not rich or poor, not a father, a soldier, a thinker, or a disappointment. You were just a body in water, breathing steam, living in sensation. You hear a faint chuckle. The man beside you shifts, lifting his cup. First time, he says. You nod. Yes, he smiles. You'll dream of it later. They all do. You don't doubt it. You sit a few minutes more, until the warmth has faded from your bones, until the buzz of the oil has gone soft, until your heartbeat and your thoughts are once again walking at the same pace. Then you stand. You hand your cup back to the servant, bow your head slightly, and walk slowly toward the last corridor, the one that leads out. The light grows brighter ahead. You're not quite ready for the world, but the baths have done their part, and now Rome is waiting. You walk the final corridor, barefoot steps slower now, not from weariness, but from an odd reluctance. Leaving the bathhouse feels like stepping out of a dream. The marble under your feet, the quiet rhythm of water still trickling behind you, it all begins to feel less like architecture and more like memory. And as you near the exit, the light ahead grows stronger, sharper. Sunlight without filter, the kind that belongs to busy streets and shouting vendors. The kind that doesn't care if you've been oiled and perfumed and transformed. You pause just before the threshold. There's a small room here, one last chamber tucked to the side, easy to miss unless you're looking for it. You're glad you are. Inside, a simple wooden table holds a few small items, a clean tunic loosely folded, sandals neatly placed, a bronze mirror with a slight dent in its frame, and beside them a jar of perfumed powder, just enough for the neck or chest. A final touch before returning to the world. You run your fingers across the mirror. Your reflection wavers slightly in the warped bronze, but you still recognize yourself. More than that, you recognize someone you like. The bathhouse didn't make you someone else. It reminded you that you were always someone worth returning to. You pull the tunic over your head. The fabric is plain, but it feels luxurious against newly cleaned skin. You tie the belt loosely, letting your shoulders breathe. The sandals go on neck soles, pressing gently into feet that have walked on heat and stone and cold, and now seem to float above the earth. You dab a bit of the powder onto your wrist. It smells like crushed flowers and chalk. Simple, clean. You take one last breath, and then you step out into Rome. And everything hits you at once. Noise, motion, color. A merchant shouting about fish too fresh to be believed. A child chasing a hoop. A woman balancing a basket on her head while arguing with a goat. A procession of priests, eyes narrowed in holy suspicion. The clang of metal. The squeal of wheels. The hiss of hot oil from a street stall. You blink, and your body responds. Shoulders pull back, gaze sharpens. You walk, but you carry the baths with you. You feel it in the softness of your movements, the way your foot lands with precision, the way your thoughts resist the noise, staying anchored just for a little while in the warmth and silence of the rooms behind you. You are no longer in the bathhouse, but it is in you. You pass a man dragging a reluctant donkey. He's sweating, swearing, pulling. You smile and offer a short nod. He glares, then laughs. Someone's been to the thermae, he says, wiping his brow with a dirty cloth. You keep walking. Further down the street, someone bumps your shoulder. Not hard, but enough. You turn. The man nods in apology, then pauses. You smell like cedar, he says. Good choice. You thank him. Keep going. The streets of Rome are never clean, but they're alive. And after what you've just experienced, they feel realer somehow. Less offensive, more human. And it hits you that the baths weren't an escape from the world. They were a way to prepare for it. Historians still debate how often the average Roman visited the thermae. Daily, says some. Weekly, says others. Some believe it was a civic duty. Others insist it was pure luxury. But no one debates their impact. Because once you've been through the cycle heat, oil, scrape, plunge, stillness, you begin to notice your body again. And through it, your place in things. You feel your presence. And the city feels it too. You pass a fountain and splash a bit of water on your face, not because you need it, but because the reflex is now part of you. A ritual even outside the walls. You glance behind you. You can't see the bathhouse anymore. But you know exactly where it is, and exactly how long it would take you to return. You won't today, but maybe tomorrow, or maybe the day after that. Because now you belong to the rhythm. The sun rides high now, casting sharp-edged shadows across the cobblestones as you move through the city. The bathhouse is behind you, but its imprint lingers. You catch it in the looseness of your stride, in the way your skin glows against the grime of the streets, in how little the noise of Rome seems to pierce your calm. You are for now untouchable. But as you weave through crowds and carts, you begin to see them the bathhouses of others. Not the buildings, the people. You spot a group of laborers dusty from the forum, talking animatedly about who's paying for admission that evening. One gestures to a coin pouch, the other to a fresh blister on his hand. They'll find a way. They always do. You pass two older women outside a bread stall, fanning themselves and gossiping. One says she goes twice a week, now thinks it'll keep her husband loyal. The other snorts. She needs a temple, not a tepidarium. You don't laugh out loud, but your smirk gives you away. Even now, out here in the working chaos of Rome, the bathhouse pulses in the background of every conversation. It is both destination and metaphor. A place you go and a way you feel. You cross the Vicus, a small side street, and stop near a column base where a few children chase one another with water skins, shrieking and drenched. A boy splashes a girl who threatens to report him to the magistrate of soap. It's clearly an inside joke, but it catches your breath. Even they understand water is power, water is play, and water shared creates something like a society. You walk on, and suddenly you're in front of another bathhouse. Not the one you just left, this one is older, smaller. Cracked tiles, faded frescoes, flaking at the edges. The sign above is chipped. Thermae Mucianae. You recognize the name. Years ago, it was a senator's gift to his district, built to honor a deceased wife. The story goes that she loved lemon oil and hated cold water, and that the baths were designed with only a tepidarium and a caldarium to reflect her habits. You're not sure if it's true, but the idea of a personalized bathhouse stays with you. You peek inside. It's quieter. The clientele thinner. An older man reads alone on a bench. A young mother wrangles a toddler near a basin. A servant wrings out towels by hand. No politics here, no ambition. Just water, steam, and need. And you realize not all bathhouses are about prestige. Some are about survival. Historians still debate the reach of public bathing, whether it truly touched every layer of Roman society or remained the realm of the privileged. But there is plenty of evidence, graffiti, ledgers, even poetry that suggests everyone from beggars to emperors sought the baths in some form. Because heat is democratic. Steam doesn't ask for your lineage. And even the poorest citizen dreams of a warm stone bench and a clean pair of sandals. You sit on the step just outside. For a while, you watch the comings and goings. A boy delivers fresh herbs, bay, rosemary, lavender. An old woman with a bent back is helped up the stairs by a stranger who doesn't wait for thanks. A soldier off duty, eyes weary, emerges from the shadows, drying his hair with a cloth that's seen better days. He breathes in deeply, not to sigh, but to reset. You know that breath. You've taken it yourself. You close your eyes briefly and imagine the flow again. The heat, the plunge, the scrape of the strigil, the whispered gossip, the carved name on the bench. It's all still in you. and it's in them too. Not just the privileged, not just the clean, but everyone who touches water with intention. You stand, step away, and feel the dust of Rome catch on your ankles again. But it doesn't cling this time, because you carry the bathhouse with you, not as a place, but as a state of being. By now the bathhouse is behind you, in distance, but not in spirit. Your body still hums from it, each muscle loose, each breath full. You've rejoined the world, but with different eyes. You walk through Rome not as a passerby, but as someone newly tuned. As you make your way through the city, you notice things. Not big things, small things. The way a curtain sways in a shop window. The way a merchant adjusts the figs on his stall, making the bruised ones look less bruised. The way two lovers lean against a column, laughing at nothing touching like they might melt if they let go. You've become sensitive, because when your body is at peace, your senses sharpen not to danger, but to beauty. You pass a group of boys skipping stones into a fountain. One tosses a flat piece of marble that skips 4 times, then sinks with a splash. His friends cheer. He grins like he just conquered Carthage, and suddenly you remember a detail from earlier. A quiet moment from inside the bathhouse, a servant refilling a lamp, and the flick of his wrist so practiced it looked like choreography. You didn't appreciate it then. You do now. This is the afterglow of the Thermae. Not grand, not explosive, just clarity. You begin to understand why some Romans returned daily. Not out of vanity or custom, but because the bath did what temples promised, what wine attempted, what poets failed to consistently achieve. It recalibrated you. Historians still argue whether the Roman obsession with bathing bordered on decadence. Seneca, if the Stoic mocked the sounds of bathhouses slapping, skin grunts, gossip, as distractions from virtue. But even he couldn't resist the occasional soak. His letters reveal a reluctant affection. He may have despised the performance, but he respected the effect. You walk further down toward the edge of the Subura, a lively, chaotic neighborhood where bathhouses aren't so refined. Here, the walls are rougher, the water slightly colder, the oil cheaper. But the people walk with the same glow. You recognize it now. An old man exits a narrow door, shaking out his tunic and stretching like he's 10 years younger. His skin is wrinkled, but it shines. You nod at him. He nods back. There's a kinship among the bathed. You pass a shrine small, tucked in a courtyard dedicated to Fortuna, goddess of fortune. Someone's left an offering of folded towel, sprigs of myrtle, and a strigil its edge dulled with use. You smile. Fortune favors the clean, apparently. You stop by a stall and buy a piece of flatbread. Still warm. You eat as you walk, tearing the bread with your fingers licking a trace of oil from your thumb. Even the simplest bite tastes earned after the bath. And then faintly, you hear it. A splash. Not nearby, not visible, but distinct. Somewhere, another bather is beginning what you just completed. And for a moment, the city feels like a living cycle, each person either going to the baths or carrying them inside them, freshly softened, quietly glowing. You turn a corner and see the Palatine rising in the distance. Statues shimmer in the heat. A senator's litter sways past, carried by sweating men who definitely won't get their turn in the Thermae until after dark, if at all. You hope they do, because no one should live only in effort. Even Rome, mighty, brutal, divine Rome, requires balance. Steel and water, tactics and tenderness, stone walls and warm oil. You keep walking, not toward anywhere in particular, just through. Every sound, every scent, every face reminds you you are still in the current of the bathhouse. Still drying, still remembering. And that's the secret, isn't it? The baths don't end when you leave the building. They end when you forget how they made you feel, and you haven't forgotten. Not yet. Not today. The sun is beginning to soften now. Less a hammer, more a lantern. The city starts to shift. Shadows grow longer, markets begin to close, and the smell of evening bread baking replaces the harsher scents of midday trade. You feel it in your bones. Rome is exhaling. And so are you. You wander toward the Forum, not for politics, not for business, but for the pleasure of walking through marble softened by dusk. You pass temples, columns, arches of triumph, each casting grand shadows. But they don't feel overwhelming today, because you've been recalibrated. You don't just look at Rome, you see it, and then you realize something else. You smell better than anyone around you. It's a small victory, but a real one. A boy selling garum, a pungent fish sauce no one should carry near their nostrils, pauses as you pass. He wrinkles his nose, then furrows his brow as if confused. You're the first person he smelled today who doesn't make him question life choices. You nod at him. He nods back baffled like he just met a minor deity of personal hygiene. You stroll past a fountain where an older woman is washing vegetables, radishes, you think, or some Roman cousin of them. She looks up at you and smiles. You've just come from the Thermae, haven't you? She asks. You confirm with a wordless tilt of the head. She clucks her tongue in approval. Good for the skin. Good for the soul. Good for the marriage, too, if you're lucky. You're not married. But you accept the compliment anyway. Moments like this unfold again and again. A stranger hands you a fig without asking for coin. A beggar waves you off politely. He can tell you don't carry cash today. Even the dogs seem to respect your pace, giving you a wider berth than usual. It's not magic. It's resonance. The bathhouse leaves a mark that only others attuned to the rhythm can perceive. And you are tuned, sharpened by heat, cleansed by water, balanced by silence. Historians still debate the politics of public bathing. But what they all agree on is this: it was one of the few Roman customs that transcended borders, classes, and eras. Long after the Republic fell and the Empire rose, even when temples crumbled and legions scattered, the baths remained. They were continuity, and they were Roman. You find a small garden just off the beaten path. No statues, no inscriptions. Just olive trees, a bench, and the faint chirping of birds relieved that the sun has finally backed off. You sit. Let your sandals loosen. Let your shoulders drop. You inhale slowly, and just for fun, try to name every scent that's still clinging to you: cedar oil, myrrh, pine smoke, perhaps even the faintest ghost of rosemary clay. You smell like ritual. You lean back and look up at the sky. It's blue, but not bold. A faded blue. A tired Roman blue. The kind you see in mosaics, in aged frescoes, where Jupiter lounges among clouds. You imagine him now watching you amused. You wonder, did gods bathe? Did they descend from Olympus now, and then sneak into a caldarium, disguised as weary mortals, just to feel something real? If they did, they probably left the same way you did. Cleaner, quieter, more aware. You rise again, not because you need to, but because movement feels good. Because every step carries forward the peace you've gathered from stone and steam. You don't have a destination anymore. Because that's the real secret: the bathhouse doesn't prepare you for one place. It prepares you for presence. It teaches you how to arrive wherever you happen to be. You walk back into the street. A woman carrying amphorae asks you to hold the door of a shop. You do. She doesn't thank you with words. Just a glance, and a nod, the universal Roman gesture for "I see you." You're part of this. And you are. You've soaked in the water, breathed the steam, sat in silence, listened to laughter. And now you are part of the city again, not as a cog or a number or a name carved in marble, but as a person, a pulse, a breath walking upright, clean, steady, ready. The street bends around the base of a hill, and with the fading sunlight brushing your face, you follow the curve not out of purpose, but out of curiosity. You pass a bakery, its stone oven exhaling waves of warmth into the street. The scent of fresh bread and wood smoke mixes with the clove and cedar still clinging faintly to your skin. For a moment, Rome feels edible. And then, unexpectedly, you hear music. Faint at first. A pluck of strings. A breath over a flute. You turn toward it. There, in a small courtyard open to the street, a gathering has begun. Not an event, not a performance, just a gathering. Someone plays a lyre. Someone else sings quietly, not for attention, but for the sheer joy of vibration. A small group of neighbors sit on the steps, sharing olives and peeled oranges. You drift closer, drawn by the calm. You're not the only bathhouse veteran here. You can tell. A man still glowing from oil sits cross-legged, eyes half closed, chewing slowly, like each bite deserves a moment of poetry. A woman beside him pulls her hair back into a twist, her bare arms dappled with recent sun and scented powder. She glances at you, smiles knowingly. You don't speak, but your presence is understood. You have the look of someone who has soaked. You sit near the fountain at the center, letting the music wash over you. The flute catches the wind just so, and for a moment it sounds like water bubbling through marble pipes. The conversation is soft. Laughter rises like steam, not boiling, but warm. No one here is trying to impress anyone. The city outside may be obsessed with performance, but this courtyard, this pocket of unwinding, is free of ambition. You tear a piece of bread from a shared basket, chew, breathe, swallow, and feel that your body has caught up with your soul. This effortless joy isn't an accident. It's what the baths prepare you for. Not just strength or beauty or composure, but receptivity. A readiness to feel, to connect without force. Historians still discuss the cultural function of leisure in Roman life. The otium, that sacred pause from obligation. Some viewed it as laziness, others as essential. Cato disapproved. Cicero refined it. But everyone knew that otium, when done properly, was not idleness. It was alignment. And you feel aligned. As if your spine has straightened invisibly, not from posture, but from belonging. Someone passes you a fig. No words. You take it. Bite. The sweetness bursts dark and rich. The singer pauses. Someone else begins to hum a different tune, older, maybe Greek. The shift is gentle. Like the bathhouse, this space isn't about control. It's about response. You remember the caldarium, the sweat, the weight of heat, the way it stripped you of thought. And you remember the plunge, the shocking clarity, and the massage, the hands that found the knots you didn't know you carried. Each moment led to this, to sitting here without needing to explain yourself. A dog wanders in, flops on the warm stone, and falls asleep instantly. You envy its honesty. The orange light of the sun begins to fade into a cooler silver. Shadows deepen. Torches are lit not ceremoniously, but as if by muscle memory. Flame flickers across the faces of strangers, made family by stillness. No one says they came from the bathhouse. They don't need to. It's visible in every breath, every unguarded smile. You close your eyes, letting the flute fold you gently inward. You're not sleeping. You're steeping in warmth that has no temperature in company, that asks for nothing, in silence that feels chosen. And somewhere deep inside, you hear it again. The echo of dripping water, the soft brush of oil over skin, the exhale that comes only after you've forgotten what you were carrying. You open your eyes, just as someone says, "We should meet here again tomorrow." Someone else agrees. And so do you, without words, because Rome is large. But it's rhythm that lives here, in courtyards, in steam, in the pause between one story and the next. You don't remember standing, or saying goodbye, or even choosing a direction. But somehow you are walking again, slowly, steadily, as if the cobbled streets have agreed to guide your feet for you. The sky is darker now, not black, just deep. That ancient Roman indigo you've seen in frescoes and tunics bleeding across the rooftops like wine across linen. Torches flicker on doorposts, conversations soften. The city leans into its quieter self. And you're still wrapped in the bathhouse. Not physically, you've dried, dressed, and dined. But something lingers. You notice it with every gesture, the way your arms swing without tension, the looseness in your jaw, the breath that comes all the way from your belly without asking permission. You feel there's no other word for it, unarmored. And Rome surprisingly treats you gently. You wander toward the edge of the Aventine. Fewer people here. The sound of sandals against stone. Someone nearby plays a single note on a reed pipe, testing its tone. You pause at a shrine, small, set into a wall, a rough carving of a river god, water trickling from an urn beneath his feet. Someone's left a coin, another a folded flower. You offer nothing but a moment, and the god seems to accept that. Because after all, haven't you already made your offering to steam, to stillness, to the small act of care that says, "I am a body, and I matter"? A cat darts past your feet. You don't flinch. Neither does the cat. There's an unspoken contract now between you and the city. It agrees not to overwhelm you so long as you keep walking like you belong. And you do. You think back to the bathhouse once more, not the heat or cold, but the people. The silent glances, the nods, the jokes too quiet to retell. The way your body joined a chorus of motion, dripping, stretching, rinsing, folding. Each person had their own path through the baths, but you were all part of the same ritual symphony. Historians still debate whether the bathhouses made Rome more equal or just more tolerable. But standing here tonight with the cool wind brushing your temple and the memory of warm tile still beneath your soles, you think maybe it did both. The bath didn't erase class, but it dissolved hierarchy, even if only for a breath. In the frigidarium, a senator gasped like a child. On the massage table, a general flinched like a poet. In the silent room, a merchant and a beggar might have sat 5 feet apart and dreamed of the same olive grove. You reach a low stone wall and lean against it. Below, the rooftops shimmer with lantern light. A dog barks in the distance. Someone sings. Badly. You smile. You're not in a rush to go home, because something in you is home. The you that walked into the baths this morning, stiff, distracted armoring for a day of Roman chaos, isn't here anymore. You've been scraped clean, and not just by strigil, by presence, by process, by the generosity of a building designed to make you pause. You draw a breath. It fills you like a good meal, like a held hand, like a first page in a fresh scroll. And you know now the bathhouse wasn't an interlude. It was the main act. Everything before it was prelude. Everything after it will carry the tone it set. You push off the wall. Keep walking. Not because there's anything left to do, but because the city moves. And now so do you. Your feet bring you to a bridge, one of those wide Roman crossings, lined with statues that don't quite watch you, but don't entirely look away either. You pause midway, hands resting on the smooth stone ledge, and gaze down at the river. The Tiber. It moves slowly tonight. Not lazy, just practiced. The way something moves when it's been flowing for centuries and doesn't need to prove anything anymore. You relate. There's no urgency in your chest. No list ticking in your mind. Just this moment, water gliding beneath you, wine tugging at your sleeve, the soft scrape of sandals on stone as someone passes behind without a word. It's strange. Earlier today, you felt like a machine in need of repair, tired, tense, moving out of habit. Now you feel like a person again, whole, and not because anything miraculous happened. Just because someone somewhere once decided that cleaning the body should also clean the mind, and that it should be done with warmth and oil and time. You watch the water for a while. A leaf drifts past. A bird lands, drinks flies off. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, you don't feel behind on anything. You don't feel like you're failing at being Roman or being human. You just are. Historians still write entire volumes about the architecture of Roman baths, the pipes, the domes, the mosaics. But very few write about the feeling afterward. The way your heartbeat evens out. The way you walk differently. The way you notice the world again. Maybe that's because feelings don't fossilize. But tonight, you are your own living artifact. You push off the ledge and continue over the bridge into a quieter quarter of the city. The crowds are thinner now. The lamps are spaced farther apart. The walls here are older, patched with mismatched bricks and graffiti that's neither clever nor poetic, but somehow reassuring. You pass a closed wine shop. Its shutters are down, but the smell of raisins and vinegar lingers. A child has drawn a horse in the dust on its wall. It's not a good horse, but it is perfect, because it's alive. And so are you. You remember faintly one of the last things you saw inside the bathhouse, carved into a stone bench near the silent room, omnia mutantur nihil interit. Everything changes, but nothing is truly lost. At the time, it felt philosophical, pretty, decorative. Now it feels true. You haven't lost anything today. You've just let go of what didn't belong anymore. You've shed it like sweat, like dirt, like silence pressed into your pores by worry or repetition. You've washed yourself back to yourself. And you didn't need incense or prophets or war for that. You just needed heat and patience and enough courage to plunge into cold water when everything in your body screamed. A door opens ahead. A family steps out, mother, father, 2 children. The smallest one is wrapped in a towel, hair still wet. They're just leaving the neighborhood balneum, a small modest bathhouse tucked behind a bakery. The child laughs and says, "I think I'm a dolphin now." The mother grins, then sleep like one. They vanish down the alley. You smile, because that's it, isn't it? That's the point. Not to emerge more powerful, but to emerge softer. You reach your street at last. Familiar stones, familiar shadows. You pause at your door, hand resting on the frame. And then before entering, you turn once more and look up at the sky. It's darker now, but you're not. The door closes behind you with a quiet thud. Not final, not heavy. Just honest. You're home. But the bathhouse hasn't left you. It has followed you in, wrapped itself in the folds of your tunic, lingered in the scent behind your ear, nested quietly in your rib cage like a warm breath waiting to be remembered. Your room is dim, not dark. The coals in the brazier still glow faintly from earlier. A jug of water sits beside the low table. and a half loaf of yesterday's bread rests near a dish of olives, untouched. You sit, slowly, and feel the way the air meets your skin. Not with urgency, but acceptance. Like it knows what you've been through. You peel off your sandals, stretch your toes. The tiles beneath your feet are cool. Not frigidarium cool, just enough to remind you that you're no longer in motion. The marble of the world has stopped echoing under your heels. The rhythm of Rome has receded, but you remain steady. You notice it most in your hands, how they no longer clench without permission. How your shoulders have forgotten the architecture of tension. How your jaw, that small hinge of control, now rests without bracing for impact. And then there's your breathing. Deep, even, present. That alone is worth the price of entry. You pour yourself a cup of water. It tastes like stone in cool morning. And for the first time in ages, it doesn't feel like something to gulp before rushing out the door. It feels like a ritual. You light a single lamp. Its flame flickers to life, warm and small, casting long shadows against the walls. Shadows that look like memory's steam rising, oil glinting, a hand scraping gently across your back, a stranger smiling with no agenda. It's strange. You thought you were just bathing. But now, sitting here in your quiet room, you realize you were witnessing something. Something deep, something Roman, and something deeply, stubbornly human. Historians still argue whether Roman bathing was more about hygiene or identity. But to you, that's a false choice, because cleanliness for the Romans was never just about removing dirt. It was about marking time, naming the day, resetting the body, and maybe reminding the soul it hasn't disappeared under all that civic duty and road dust. You lie back on your cot, arms behind your head, eyes half-lidded. And you remember. Not just facts, no one cares whether the frigidarium came before or after the caldarium right now. You remember sensations. The slap of cold water. The weight of a towel on your shoulders. The way someone handed you wine without asking for anything. The way your thoughts became quiet, not from force, but from generosity. You realize the bathhouse didn't just cleanse your body, it reset your relationship with yourself. You're not a cog in a system right now. You're a human being lying on linen in the low flicker of lamplight, warmed by memory, wrapped in nothing but air and stillness. And it is enough. You roll onto your side, feel the tension ease from your spine, and think for the briefest moment about the people who won't get to bathe tonight. The servant who scraped the floors after you left. The young man who stole an extra handful of oil for his brother. The woman who sat near the fountain and didn't speak. They carry something too. Not just sweat or labor, but the quiet dignity of people who exist within the flow, even if they're not named in marble. And so do you. You close your eyes, and for the first time in far too long, you don't feel like you're chasing sleep. You feel like it's walking toward you. Somewhere in the city, a bell tolls soft, deliberate, distant. You hear it from your cot, and for a moment you imagine it not as a timekeeper, but as a thank you. A small bronze voice echoing across tiled roofs to say, you made it through. Not just the day, the ritual. Because that's what today has become, hasn't it? You didn't just bathe. You journeyed. Now lying in the quiet, you feel each part of the process echo through you. Like steps taken on a long road now lived in your bones. Tepidarium, caldarium, frigidarium, scrape, soak, silence, oil, clay, conversation. They weren't rooms. They were thresholds. You feel a deep satisfaction bloom in your chest. Not triumph, not pride. Completion. You don't need anything else tonight. And for a Roman, that is saying something. Because Rome, this empire of excess, of ambition, of granite goals and wine-stained schemes, is not known for letting you feel finished. There's always another deal to make another god, to honor another wrong to right or cause. But tonight, you are done. And in this space between being and doing, you remember something someone said in the caldarium. The frigidarium will toughen your body, but the palestra will eat your ego. At the time, it was just a line. Now it feels like prophecy, because somewhere in those steaming halls and cold basins, you let go of something. You don't even know what it was. An expectation, a disappointment, a posture you thought you had to hold, gone, evaporated, lifted into the rafters of the tepidarium with the scented steam. Historians still wrestle with what the baths meant to Rome's collective psyche. Some argue they were indulgent distractions from decay. Others see them as the height of Roman civilization, where engineering met elegance and humanity met healing. You no longer care what the books say, because you have lived it. And what you lived wasn't distraction, it was presence. You're not detached from the world now. You're more in it, more sensitive to the way the air tastes, more willing to smile at strangers, more capable of being soft in a city made of stone. You hear footsteps outside your door, then silence, then the creak of another door across the alley. Voices murmur briefly, a laugh, a hush. Even the city is winding down. You think again of the servants at the bathhouse. The ones who oiled your back, swept the tiles, smiled without asking questions. You hope they rest well tonight. You hope they soak their own hands. You hope they have someone or something to whisper them into dreams. You roll onto your back and stare at the ceiling beams. They're plain, functional, Roman. But tonight they feel beautiful, because you're looking at them with unhurried eyes. That's the real miracle, isn't it? The bath didn't make you new. It made you aware. It cleared just enough space in your head for beauty to sneak back in. A flicker of lamplight, the shape of wood grain, the way your own breath sounds when you're not trying to breathe. You smile, not because there's a joke, but because you're allowed to. And that somehow feels revolutionary. You let your eyes close, and you don't think of what needs doing tomorrow. You think only of the water, still flowing beneath Rome, still warming in the furnace, still waiting for someone to arrive. Strip down, step in, and remember themselves. The dream comes quietly, not with fanfare or fantastical visions, but like steam rising from a freshly poured basin, gentle, warm, familiar. In it, you are back in the caldarium, though no longer surrounded by others. The chamber is empty. The marble glows faintly as if lit from within. And there's water, so much water, but it doesn't touch your skin. It hums around you, suspended, waiting. You walk barefoot. Your steps echo not loudly, but with presence, like the sound belongs to the room. And then a voice not booming, not whispered, just steady. Do you remember who you are? You stop, not because you're frightened, but because the question feels less like a challenge, more like a return. You don't answer out loud. You don't need to, because your body does, with its calm, its softness, its stillness. You reach down, press your fingers to the stone bench, and feel it, the heat that never left, the warmth you carry even now in sleep. And then you wake, not with a jolt, but with a deep, grounded inhale. The lamp has burned out. The coals are long cold. Morning hasn't arrived yet, but the night has settled into its purest form, quiet and full of permission. You roll to your side, and remember yesterday, not as a sequence of tasks, but as a single flowing event, like a river that carried you without struggle, one that left you rinsed not just of sweat, but of effort. And you know now that's why the baths mattered. Not just for the body, not just for society, but for the reset they offered, one so rare in a city built on momentum. Historians still parse the architecture, the scale, the politics. They measure bricks and pipe angles. They debate who built what first and why. But few speak of this, the moment between night and morning when a Roman fresh from the Thermae lies still in their bed and feels enough. Not because they won anything, or built anything, or said the right thing at the right dinner, but because they were allowed to be soft. In the world's hardest city, you swing your legs off the cot, stand, your feet are steady, your balance sure. You pour the last of the water into a small bowl, splash your face. The cold is real, not cruel, clarifying. And then you move to the window. Rome sleeps. Even the cats are quiet. The stones still hold heat from the day before. And the streets, though empty, hum with an invisible pulse, and the knowledge that morning is always coming, and that someone somewhere is already stoking the fires beneath the next hypocaust. You rest your hand against the window frame and smile. You are no longer walking toward the baths. You are walking out of them, still glowing, still softened, still whole. Dawn creeps in slow over Rome, not triumphant, not noisy, just inevitable. The sky lightens from navy to dusty, rose the kind of pale pink you'd find in the folds of a conch shell. Light glints off roof tiles, catches on glass jars left in windows, and settles into the city's old bones like a silent offering. And you're already walking, not with haste, not with purpose, just walking. You pass familiar corners, the bakery whose stones still breathe out the scent of yesterday's bread, the faded wall with Livia's name scratched into it, the alley where you watched someone sing last night under a flickering lamp. Rome repeats itself. But you've changed. Every step you take is light, as if the ground gives way a little more easily beneath your soles. You're still clean, though the dust has returned to your sandals. You're still glowing, though the air now holds the sharpness of early morning. And then you see it. Another bathhouse. Not yours, not the one that welcomed you yesterday. This one is smaller, humbler, tucked between a dye shop and a shrine to Mercury. Its facade is simple, no columns, no grandeur, just a worn sign and a servant sweeping the steps. But the same quiet reverence radiates from it. You stop, because suddenly something stirs in you. A memory, no. A realization. This isn't about a bathhouse. This is about the ritual itself. The decision to pause, to soften, to shed. To remember that you are not just a citizen or a worker or a number on a census scroll. You are a body, and a body deserves care. You step closer, nod to the servant who nods back without asking why you're here so early. Because he knows. Everyone who's ever walked into one of these marble sanctuaries knows. Inside, someone is already heating the water. Somewhere below, the hypocaust is stirring those fires beneath the floor, crackling awake, whispering ancient warmth into stone. Historians still study the mechanics, the bricks, the flues, the aqueducts. But here, in this quiet moment between day and duty, you feel something simpler gratitude, not just for the bathhouses, but for the people who kept them burning, the unseen labor, the muscle behind the marble, the rhythm behind the ritual. You remember the furnace keeper, his hands blackened with soot, his silence louder than the clang of bronze. He never looked up, but you remember his shoulders hunched in holy work. You remember the oil boy barefoot, quick endlessly refilling flasks without thanks. You remember the masseur who pressed his thumb into your back like he was trying to press you back into yourself. They were all part of it. You were part of it. And now you carry that forward, not as a guest, but as a keeper of the rhythm. You smile. Turn away from the bathhouse not out of rejection, but out of completion. You don't need to enter, because you still carry yesterday's heat in your chest. And today, that's enough. You walk toward the heart of the city where carts will soon roll over uneven stones, and children will begin arguing about dice, and vendors will shout about figs that probably aren't as ripe as they claim. You don't dread it. You welcome it. Because you've been softened. And the city, in its strange, brutal, beautiful way, is ready to meet that softness again. Not with fanfare, but with rhythm. And for once you're walking in time. You arrive at the Forum just as the first real bustle begins. Merchants lay out wares. Cloaks are folded back, scrolls unfurled. A senator's litter creaks by, flanked by silent guards. Pigeons flap into the light, like scraps of ancient parchment come alive. Rome is awake, but you are aware. And there is a difference. You don't walk like someone looking for something anymore. You walk like someone who has been found, even if only by steam and stone and a shared silence in a marble room. You move through the crowd without effort. You are not separate from the city now. You belong to it, and it in turn seems to shape itself around you. There's a bakery giving away yesterday's bread. A boy shouts, "It's only a little hard," with the kind of grin that makes you buy 2 loaves instead of 1. You hand one to a woman sitting beside a broken column. She nods, says nothing. But her fingers brush yours as she takes it. And in that moment, without incense or oration or oracle, the world blesses you. You find a small bench in the sun, sit, breathe, and as warmth settles into your back, you think not of what's next, but of what's already been preserved. Because now you know the baths aren't just water and heat and conversation. They are memory, carried in the body, pressed into tile, etched behind the eyes of every Roman who ever stepped from cold marble into warm air and whispered, if only to themselves, "I feel human again." You feel it still, in your loosened shoulders, in the calm behind your eyes, in the echo of dripping water that follows you, invisible and constant like a second pulse. And you know that someday the buildings may crumble, the pools may dry, the marble may be scavenged and repurposed into someone else's idea of permanence. But the rhythm survives, in every slow breath, in every quiet kindness, in every choice to soften instead of harden. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to feel the sun. And in that final pause before the day truly begins, you say nothing. You just smile. Because some stories don't end. They simply flow forward, like steam rising from a forgotten stone, like footsteps echoing down a warm corridor, like water always finding its way back to the light.